So tell me how your visit at the zoo was.
So it was really hot, and we went to go see the dolphin show, and the dolphins
Hmm.
were really cute, and they were very noisy, which was so much fun because I'm noisy. And then we went to go see the big cats, and then it started pouring, but it was hot out. So we just kind of embraced it, enjoyed it. We let ourselves cool down. We went into wherever we wanted to go. So, like the reptile and bird houses, the primate house, which the primate house at the Lincoln, no, at the Brookfield Zoo is absolutely fantastic.
Hmm.
I could watch primates for hours, but they have such large enclosures. It's amazing. Especially for like the gibbons and the orangutans. It's 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 so excellent. But like we went to see like the Australia place because they have like bats in there. The swampland area where they had river otters. It was just really cool.
I am so jealous. I haven't been to a zoo in I don't know how long.
It's been probably 20 years since I've been to that specific zoo. It's been a hot second.
I don't know the last time I've been to a zoo, period.
But yeah, that's what we did for our anniversary. Tomorrow we're going to the Legos.
Oh.
I'm going to the DMV in the morning.
Mm.
I told my dad 8 a.m., which I'm going to regret at 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm. All right. Wow. That's way more fun than I had today. I just worked.
I was about to say, you went to work.
Yeah, I just worked all day. And I thought about the podcast all day. Hey, witches.
Hey, witches.
We're going to talk about The Crucible by Arthur Miller. And first, I kind of want to talk about why and when he wrote and released The Crucible. And Kaya, you can jump in like whenever you want.
You got it, sis.
All right, so story time. Arthur Miller wrote and released The Crucible during the second Red Scare in the 1950s. If you don't know, the Red Scare is when there was a rise in paranoia and fear of communism and leftist ideologies in the United States. It also came to be known as McCarthyism. McCarthy was this Wisconsin governor who was pretty much just a huge asshole.
He was a piece of shit.
Yeah. The whole idea was that if you were brought in for questioning and you told them that your neighbor or whoever they were questioning you about was a communist, you could go home. This is similar to how the witch trials went down. And if you just pointed to whoever and called them a witch, you were good to go. If you didn't, you were hung for it. At first, Arthur Miller was so entrenched in the drama of the Salem witch trials when he was like researching them. He really just loved all the juicy gossip. But then he started drawing the parallels between 1692 Salem and 1950s America. He thought, quote, some light could be thrown on what we were doing to ourselves, and that's how the play came to be. Arthur was actually cited for contempt of Congress when he refused to do what we just talked about. He was asked to point someone out and, basically call them a communist, and he said no, and he received a fine and actually a prison sentence, but it was appealed.
So I'm fairly up to date with politics in the modern day. But politics from the 1950s and like Cold War era and all of that time, I'm very, very, very ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I simply didn't learn enough about it. I don't know. I wasn't taught it. It hasn't been something that's interested me enough to research it. And I just, to be honest, do not understand why communism is seen as such a bad thing. I know that there are better forms of government, better forms of politics, but I don't see why it was such a bad thing, why people who were charged for communism got
Mm-hmm.
prison sentences.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense to me, but did anything make sense in 1950s America? I don't think so.
No. Well, back then, like it was mostly because of like Russia, right? And the Soviet Union.
Yeah, that
And
makes sense.
And before I say anything else, I want to say I am not as a political scholar. We in the United States are very individualistic. Communism is very not individualistic. Things that are very different are scary to us. And I think,
That's just America in general.
yeah.
FBI, I stand with you,
Um,
in case you're listening.
I mean, United States, we arrested like Japanese immigrants for for thinking they're communist just because like they're Japanese. Like, not a great track record. I'm gonna have to fact check myself on that, but like I'm like 80% sure that I'm right.
Yeah, Japanese internment camps in the 1950s were a thing, and they were basically arrested, put in these camps for being or looking Japanese, which I
That was for Pearl Harbor, right? Because of
that was
Pearl Harbor.
after Pearl Harbor, but yes, because of Pearl Harbor and I believe World War II. But literally, if you looked Japanese and you were like in California, they were like, hey, I know a great place for you. It's a concentration camp. Guess what? We're going to give you a place to sleep, a place to eat, a place to work. And they didn't know it was going to be just like the frickin' Nazi concentration camps.
Love it here. We did great. We did great, folks.
Ooh, America.
Yay, America. So,
Something else that I also wanted to probably briefly go over is the definition of crucible, because I didn't know the definition of crucible before we started doing this.
oh,
Um, do we have that written down?
yeah, I have it. I have it.
So I have the crucible here, the definition of crucible, a situation of severe trial or in which different elements interact, leading to the creation of something new.
Mm. I think that's better than what definition they put in the copy that I read. Because in the copy that I read of the Crucible, the definition that they wrote down was a place of extreme heat or a severe test. But I feel like the definition that you read is much more applicable to what the Crucible is about.
The definition that they put in there sounds like the other definition, a ceramic or metal container in which metals or other substances may be melted or subjected to very high temperatures.
Yeah.
That sounds more of the speed of the one in your book.
Yeah, I feel like the one that you have is a little more accurate to what the story is about. Um, so the Crucible is about the town of Salem and them undergoing a huge bout of pretty much hysteria. Basically, some girls decided they were bored and they took it too far. And not only that, but the townspeople used this farce to their advantage in order to get back at their neighbors for petty things in the name of greed.
Probably someone was mad that their cow ate somebody else's grass or something.
I mean, that's not too far off from some of the things in here.
Seems accurate.
So in the first act, we get to know some of our key characters. We open with Reverend Paris and his daughter Betty, who's sick in bed. He discovered Betty and his niece Abigail, who I'm going to call Abby, and 10 to 12 other girls dancing in the woods with his slave Tituba. He believes that they're practicing witchcraft, and there's already talk of it in the town. I'm going to come back to Tituba later, but she is a key component in this story and in the whole idea of bringing witchcraft to the West.
I just want to know why it's not just chill to have a dance party in the woods.
So this comes up like 2 or 3 times in the book. Dancing is just like not okay. Like when you're Puritan, dancing is not okay. It's just not okay.
No twerking in Salem, I guess.
Yeah. If you're Puritan, are there Puritans nowadays?
Let me Google that real quick.
Oh, Puritan Conference.
Who they live and thrive in every area of society.
The Puritans viewed the ideal person as someone who separated himself from the world, resisted its evils, and focused on the work that had to be done. It is therefore not surprising that they viewed dancing as an activity that led its followers to pride and vanity.
Sounds like the Amish.
Yeah.
They can't come at me because they can't listen to podcasts, so I'm not afraid.
Yeah, so dancing is a no-go, basically. This comes up a couple times where they're like, dancing. They were dancing, you let them dance, and the viewer's like, no, I didn't let them dance. I found them dancing.
I would let them.
So yeah, I would let them dance too. Reverend Paris is a very fussy guy. He thinks everyone's out to get him. Abby tells him to go to the townspeople and tell them that there's no witchcraft, basically dispel the rumors. And for some reason he says no. Don't really know why he says no. And then he goes on for a little bit more about how people are out to get him. He's a really unlikable character. The next people to enter are Anne and Thomas Putnam. They're asking about the witchcraft that occurred, and Reverend Paris is like, what? Witchcraft? No. Anne says that her last 7 babies. What's up?
I'm just reading this note. Anne says that her last 7 babies have died during childbirth, so obviously it must be witchcraft.
Yes.
What?
Yes. So, yeah, Anne Putnam, her last 7 babies died during childbirth, and she's convinced that it's due to the witchcraft that's going throughout Salem.
Okay, first, Anne, maybe you're just bad at giving birth.
She does have one daughter named Ruth, but she has 7 other babies that had passed during childbirth. And so she's suspecting that the witchcraft that's rampant in Salem is to blame.
I think she's a dumb bitch.
So yeah, she says that to Reverend Paris, and being that they're visiting and seeing Betty, Reverend Paris's sick daughter, they're also telling them that Ruth, Anne and Thomas's daughter, is also sick. She's in a translate state and not eating. Ruth was also with the girls in the woods last night, along with Mercy, who is the Putnam's servant, and Mary Warren, who is John Proctor's servant. All these girls are here now to see sick little Betty. All the adults leave the room and they leave the girls alone. And then Betty wakes up all of a sudden and she starts yelling about how Abby drank blood in order to kill John Proctor's wife. Well, who's John Proctor? And why would Abby want to kill his wife?
Stop it. This drama.
I know.
This is, what the fuck?
I know. It's dramatic and juicy. And when I read this in school.
Whose blood did Abby drink?
So Abby drank chicken blood. She didn't drink any human blood. She drank chicken blood, according to Tituba. I didn't write this in our notes because I didn't think it was pertinent, but I'm glad you asked. This is why you're here, to ask the important questions.
I want to know why I don't remember any of this shit from my senior year of high school. I understand it was 10 years ago, but this shit's crazier than like a reality TV show.
I know, it's so dramatic and juicy, and I don't remember any of this. I remember John Proctor and Abby, and that's it, and Tituba.
And why does Abby want to kill his wife?
So that's what I said. Why would Abby want to kill his wife? Well, John Proctor is a simple farmer in Salem who doesn't go to church much because he just straight up does not like Reverend Paris. And honestly, I don't blame him. Reverend Paris is a snivelly little, he's just very annoying.
Sounds like John's in his right mind.
Abby used to work for John and his wife Elizabeth, but was let go 7 months ago. And there are rumors it's because John had an affair with Abby. Let's state for the record that in the story, Abby is 17 and John is 35.
What about in real life? He said there was a difference, correct?
Yeah, in real life,
he said she was like 12 and he was like 50, right?
Yeah, Abby was 11 and John was 50, historically speaking. But they didn't have an affair in real life. The affair is completely...
Oh, okay. This is Arthur Miller chalking it up.
Yeah, this is the part, like, Arthur Miller needed, like, a plot device to kind of tie everything together, I think. And so he invented this affair between Abby and John.
Okay.
So...
Thank you, Arthur. Big fan.
I'm just really glad that it wasn't actually... like it didn't happen in real life.
Oh, sis, me too.
Like, good lord. Still 17 and 35, that's still pretty fucking gross. After making this claim about Abby drinking blood in order to kill John Proctor's wife, Betty passes the fuck out again. John enters, and all the girls but Abby leave the room. Their affair is confirmed in some flirty exchanges, but John shuts it down. He regrets having ever entertained the affair with Abby because Abby's just a child. He calls her a child, and Abby is very annoyed by this because, of course, she is, because he didn't treat her like a child. He treated her like an adult when he had the affair with her.
But she is a child.
She is a child. So, but she doesn't feel like a child because he didn't treat her like one. So she is all in the mindset that she is a woman. You know, it messed with her head. I wrote down, you can't put toothpaste back in the tube, and John is just kind of acting like he can just pretend it never happened.
I'm very much familiar with that can't put toothpaste back in the tube metaphor.
Then there are psalms being sung downstairs. They're in the upstairs of a hall of some kind.
A municipal building?
Maybe. But there are psalms being sung downstairs, and Betty wails when she hears the Lord's name, and everyone rushes up to the room to try and help, but only a very old, very holy, very renowned lady named Rebecca Nurse can calm her. This lady's like 90 years old. She just comes up to her and she just stops. She doesn't do anything. She just comes up to her. Rebecca tells everyone to relax because kids just be like that sometimes. That's literally like essentially what she said. It's just
I'd be like that too.
Yeah, she's just like, kids just be like that sometimes. Like, kids are just crazy. Kids just attract demons sometimes. It's fine, guys. That's essentially what she says. She'll get over it. Like, kids are resilient and she'll drive out the demon, essentially, is what she says. So everyone just needs to calm down. There's a lot of bickering about how the church is run by Reverend Paris. And again, he's like, everyone's out to get me. And then John says, if there's a faction against you and authority, then sign me the fuck up. And everyone's like, holy shit. And I was also like, holy shit. A guy named Reverend Hale shows up, and he's a specialist with possession and witchcraft. He questions Abby, who throws blame at Tituba, saying she made her drink blood, which we already talked about. She made her drink chicken blood. Excuse me, she didn't make her drink chicken blood. It was probably Abby's idea. We don't know for sure.
Tituba is 12 to 17. Tituba didn't make her do anything.
Exactly, yeah.
That's another slave. She didn't make her do anything.
We need to talk about that for a second. Because it doesn't say it in the book, and if you have read The Crucible, you might have had this perception that Tituba was like an old woman or something. She was not. How old was Tituba?
Between 12 and 17 when she died.
Yeah, Tituba was like the same age as all these girls that were accusing everyone of witchcraft.
Tituba was a baby.
Yeah, Tituba didn't make her do shit. And this scene where Abby throws blame to Tituba is pretty sad. Everyone pressures Tituba into confessing to witchcraft and speaking with the devil. Apparently, the devil wanted Tituba to kill Reverend Paris. Tituba says something about how the devil said that he has white people working for him, and so if she does something for him, he can get her back to Barbados. And she said, no, devil, you're a liar. And she said she doesn't want to kill Reverend Paris. And this is all stuff she was telling the reverends and, you know, everyone in the room. And it was just a very sad scene. And honestly, The Crucible was really, side note, The Crucible is really interesting to read.
Right.
Having it not being like assigned reading. And it's also very sad.
Yeah, I get that. It seems like race plays a huge factor in this.
Yeah. I'll get to that after the story because I have stuff to say more about race and things like that as well. And I have some sources regarding race too. I wish I had more sources, but I don't. I only have two. I kind of ran out of time. Tituba then points out Sarah Good and Goody Osborne, who midwifed Anne's babies a few times. And remember, Anne thinks the reason all her children died during childbirth is because of witchcraft. Her midwife was accused of witchcraft, therefore, the reason her babies died was witchcraft.
So, can we go over Goody again?
Right. Goody is a term used in Puritan communities for married women. Okay. It's just like Mrs., basically.
I hate it.
The reason I put Goody Osborne in the notes is because they never say her first name. So I just put Goody.
Wait, can I also mention
Yeah.
we have Sarah Good and Goody Osborne, so that means there's probably a Goody Good somewhere. Probably not mentioned, but that's probably a thing.
Yeah. Maybe Sarah Good's mom was a Goody Good.
I would rather be a Goody Good than a Goody Marnell. Just saying.
Have Tony change his last name legally.
I actually have almost convinced him to do so because then he could be Anthony Daniels, who played C-3PO in Star Wars. And
Oh.
I've halfway convinced him to do it.
Me and Andrew were having this conversation because Andrew Gray sounds like an erotica
Yeah,
character.
yeah, it does. Yeah. Okay,
um
back to
anyways.
the thing.
Anyways, then Abby and Betty go back and forth until the curtain falls, calling name after name, saying they saw so and so with the devil. And by the end of it, there are 14 accused. They're going back and forth like they're playing like Simon Says. That's not a good example, but like they're going back and forth like they're playing a game. Like, I saw so and so with the devil. Oh, I
Yeah,
saw
well,
so and
I
so with
saw
the
so and
devil.
so.
Yeah, that's basically what they're doing. And by the time the curtain falls, there's 14 that are accused.
Well, I I don't like them.
Yeah, not great. So, Act 2 starts with John at home with Elizabeth, and there's a lot of picture painting going on, but basically the distance and the tension between them is palpable. After talking about the 14 accused sitting in jail, John tells Elizabeth that the discussion he had with Abby, basically about like how the fact that they were just dancing in the woods and nothing really happened, that discussion took place alone. And Elizabeth is annoyed by this and suspicious. And he says, "Woman, I'll not have your suspicion anymore." And she replies, "Then let you not earn it. I see what I see, John." And I was making dinner when I read that, and out loud to myself, I went, "Ooh." In a book about a Puritan community in the 1600s, I don't know, it just gave me great joy to see a woman character, like kind of,
Talking back.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like for the record, like she knew that he had cheated on her, like he had told her. She has reason to be suspicious after hearing that he was with Abby alone when this discussion occurred.
They couldn't really get divorced back in those days.
Not that I know of, no. Even if they could, I mean, I think in Puritan culture, it's probably super frowned upon to get divorced.
They probably get shunned if they get divorced. Either that or because it's the 1600s and they're women, they probably have to go back home to their families if they get divorced. Because they can't own land, they can't have money, they can't do anything.
Yeah.
So either they couldn't get divorced, or if they did, they had nothing.
Yeah. Isn't that fun?
I'm glad that we live in the modern era.
Yes. You know, when people are like, I was born in the wrong generation, it's like, shut the
Oh,
fuck
you
up.
weren't.
Shut up.
Oh, you were not.
You
What the
can
heck?
listen to Elvis now. Like, he's like, it's fine. You weren't gonna meet him anyways.
You can listen to Elvis now. You can wear the vintage clothing. It's fine.
It is quite literally not going anywhere. Mary, their servant, remember, walks in after being in court all day. She made Elizabeth a little poppet in there to pass the time she was sewing. She tells them that now 39 people are accused and one has been sentenced to hang. This person was sentenced to hang because she came to Mary one day asking for food and she was turned away. And when she was turned away, she walked away and she mumbled something. The court asked her what she mumbled, and she said she was saying her commandments. The court asked her to recite her commandments, and she couldn't name any.
Do you think maybe she has anxiety or stage fright? Because methinks maybe.
Yeah, it could be any number of reasons. Like, if someone put me on the spot and asked me to name, I don't know if I can name the Ten Commandments on the spot. I don't
Like,
know.
okay, literally, if I was sitting in a courtroom and somebody was like, you have to name 10 Taylor Swift songs or else you're gonna die, I would probably literally be like, and just sit there like baffled.
I can tell you one thing. If she couldn't name any commandments, it's not because she was a witch. I can tell you one other thing too. It's she didn't deserve to die because she couldn't name any commandments. I do wonder if that was a real reason that someone was hanged, because I know Arthur Miller did a lot of research when he wrote his book, and so if that is a real reason someone was hanged during the Salem witch trials, I want to throw up. That's vile.
They hang people for all kinds of stupid shit.
So then Mary also tells them that Elizabeth was accused in court today. Elizabeth is convinced Abby is behind this, and her wish is to have Elizabeth killed so that she can take her place next to John. So basically replace Elizabeth as his wife.
I hate her. Abby is Paris's daughter, correct?
Abby is Paris's niece.
Why is he standing for this?
Well, he doesn't know that they slept together. No one knows that John and Abby slept together except for Elizabeth and John and Abby, I guess.
Abby, and probably Abby's friends.
That's true. Some of Abby's friends do know.
If I was having an affair with a married man, all my friends would be knowing about it.
Yeah, same.
Don't tell me secrets. I spill that shit.
I mean, like,
Not to anybody important, but I spill that shit.
she's 17, so like if I was a 17-year, I mean, maybe not now, but like if I was a 17-year-old having an affair with a married man, all my friends would know.
Oh, literally.
So, which is very stupid because like most 17-year-olds have loose lips, and being in the community that they were in, I don't know, whatever. Then Reverend Hale comes to visit the Proctors, and he lightly questions them about things like their commandments, the baptism of their children, and their infrequent church attendance. Because if you'll remember, John doesn't come to church a lot.
Because Paris is a dick.
Right. He doesn't like Reverend Paris. However, he in fact hung the door on the church. Like, he is very Christian. So it's all kind of bullshit.
You don't have to go to church to be religious.
Yeah. And the other thing Reverend Hale was questioning about the baptism of their children, one of their children isn't baptized, their most recent child, and it's because Reverend Paris had taken up space at the church, and he didn't want him to baptize his child because, he really doesn't like Reverend Paris.
That's fair.
Yeah. But in the eyes of, the church and therefore the law back then, that's not a good reason. So Reverend Hale is like, you better get that kid baptized. John tells Reverend Hale what Abby told him, that they were only dancing in the woods. And then I have a quote here, because Reverend Hale is going on and on about how they need to find the witches, and the devil is walking in Salem and they gotta catch him. And Proctor said, I never knew until tonight that the world has gone daft with this nonsense. And Reverend Hale says, nonsense, mister. I myself have examined Tituba, Sarah Good, and numerous others that have confessed to dealing with the devil. They have confessed it. John says, and why not if they must hang for denying it? They are them that will swear to anything before they'll hang. Have you never thought of that? You fucking idiot. Like, it really does not occur to these people that, like, they might be lying so that they don't die. Not once does it occur to them.
It's irritating.
And if it does occur to them, like, it doesn't matter because it's in their favor. It's in the favor of the church, and so it's in the favor of, the courts / the church, because they're based, like, the law and the church are one entity. If it's in their favor, then it doesn't really matter if they're not telling the truth, because it makes them look good.
I hate that.
Yay! Reverend Hale asks if they believe in witches, and John says, not really, but sure, if the Bible tells me so. Then Elizabeth says no, and I think this fucked her over. Francis Nurse, Rebecca Nurse's husband, and Giles Corey then appear at the Proctor's house. Both their wives have been jailed. The reason Giles's wife, Martha, was jailed was because 4 to 5 years ago, she sold a pig to someone and the pig died soon after. The man they sold it to came back to Martha for his money back, and she said to him, "If you haven't the wit to feed a pig properly, you'll not live to own many." Which, like, LOL. Now, this man claims that from that day on, he can't keep a pig alive for more than 4 weeks because Martha bewitched him.
Don't get a pig if you can't afford, if you can't take care of it.
This ties back to the people of Salem using all this witch bullshit to get back at each other for old grievances. Many characters say the devil is walking in Salem, but John says, "I'll tell you what's walking in Salem. Vengeance is walking in Salem." And it's a lot of these people who are being accused are people who have done each other wrong. Things like that have to do with land ownership, things that have to do with selling a pig and then the pig dying, for example. Things like that. Things that are just old, petty, greedy bullshit. And they're giving each other up to die, basically, for this. Some folks come with a warrant to arrest Elizabeth. Why? They discover a needle in the poppet that Mary gave Elizabeth. Why does that matter? When Abby was having dinner, she fell over in pain and pulled out a needle from her stomach that had been stuck in 2 to 3 inches. She accused Elizabeth of sending her spirit familiar to stick it in her.
So a poppet's a doll.
Yeah.
But Mary made it.
Yes, Mary sewed her this doll sitting in court all day just to pass the time. And Abby probably did. She did. She did see Mary stick the needle inside of the poppet for safekeeping. And so she conjured up this whole, like, act to put on during dinner to act like she was stabbed.
How did poor Elizabeth get caught up in this bullshit?
Well, she was married to John, and John couldn't.
It's just a shitty farmer.
Yeah, well.
Okay, so, like, I don't know why my brain was being stupid, but when you said needle, I was thinking, like, I don't know, drugs needle or, like, tattoo needle or
A sewing needle.
I wasn't thinking about a sewing needle because that's not where my brain went because I don't know. But when Abby was having dinner, she fell over in pain and pulled out a needle from her stomach, and she accused Elizabeth of sending her spirit familiar to stick it in her stomach. First off, why would Elizabeth didn't sew it. Elizabeth didn't make it.
But she knew that Mary was going to give the poppet to Elizabeth.
Elizabeth should still be fine. Elizabeth should still be free.
Yeah, I know. And
Abby, stop being a little horn dog. Jesus fucking Christ, bitch.
And also, like, even if she didn't know that Mary was going to give it to Elizabeth, Mary is their servant, so she knew it would be in the house, and all they need is Abby's word that Elizabeth sent her spirit to do it, and they could just, like, that's all the proof they need, is that Abby said it was Elizabeth's spirit familiar. So then obviously the poppet is Elizabeth's, even if Mary doesn't give it to Elizabeth, because that's just how the fucked up logic works back then.
I'm so glad we are not living in that time.
So let's take a break from all this bullshit. I have a witchy corner here to talk about familiars very briefly, because guess what? Spirit familiars don't act like this. They don't do witch's bidding. Some people will say familiars are like pets, which is only half true. It's kind of like not all pets are familiars, but most familiars are pets. I will tell you what they are not. They are not invisible creatures that come and stab you with a needle, like Abby is saying. There's another instance in this book later where they're saying that a spirit familiar is like a bird trying to claw somebody's eyes out. that's also not what a familiar is. That's not how they work.
I don't know enough about familiars.
Example, I'm a witch and I have a cat, but my cat is not my familiar.
Your cat's just a cat.
Yeah, my cat's just a cat. Unfortunately, I don't have a familiar.
They sound like fun.
Familiars are animals that aid witches in their practice, and that's true, but obviously not like it's shown in the Crucible. These animals can't really be sent to do our bidding, like I said. Some witches receive downloads or messages from their familiars.
That's cool.
And others are simply companions in their crafts, like they'll watch over their spell work or readings. And then there's other instances where like they might bring you things, but that's a little more rare.
Like a
is my
dead mouse
understanding.
they found in the woods? Wait, regular cat.
I was thinking more like, I don't know, like feathers or
Ooh.
like, I don't know, little trinkets they might find, things that you can use in your spell work. But yeah, they don't go and do your bidding, and they're certainly not invisible things that can go stab people. That's just not what it is. But that's just a very brief overview on what familiars are, and the Crucible is a very brief overview on what familiars are not.
So, do we know, did Arthur Miller do research on witchcraft before writing this? Obviously, he did research on the Salem witch trials, but did he do research on witchcraft?
I don't know. I didn't read anything that said that he did any research on witchcraft. But the thing is that back when he wrote this in the 1950s, I don't think witches were like public with their craft, and so like there wouldn't be a lot for him to.
It was still quite taboo.
Right. And let me Google something quick. Okay, so like the person that I was thinking of, this person who wrote a lot of books on Wicca, who would be like he was the first person that I could think of that was like a source for witchcraft that I think Arthur Miller would reference. He wasn't born until 1956.
Oh, so he certainly was not alive during.
Right. And I'm sure there was other sources for Arthur Miller to reference, but I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't think he did any research, but I didn't see anything saying he did or did not. But I'm assuming he did not.
Okay.
But even if he did, like, this is what they believed happened. This is very much back in the 1600s what they would think occurred. Like, right. they would believe when Abby said, I was stabbed and Elizabeth sent her spirit familiar to do it. Like, they would believe that that's what happened. So Elizabeth is arrested. Like I said, this is hard proof for them, seeing that doll in her house.
Right.
Even though they're like, Mary gave it to me, it doesn't matter. John tells Mary that she's coming with him to court tomorrow to sort all this out. She said, well, if you do, Abby's going to tell everyone about your affair. And John says, what? Ever. Because my guy has had enough of this bullshit. Like, he just wants his wife back. He wants all of this to be over with. He knows all the witchcraft stuff is nonsense. He wants to be done with it. So, Act 3 starts in court, and we're introduced to Judge Danforth and Judge Hathorne. Judge Hathorne's just kind of there. Judge Danforth is the main guy that we're dealing with, and he's kind of a hard ass, and he's very holier than thou.
Hate those people.
Giles is trying to get his wife out of the courtroom. She's being questioned right now. He's super remorseful because he had low-key reported her for reading a lot of books, and his reasoning is, well, I've been married 3 times, and she's the only one who's ever been so taken with books, so I just wanted to get to the bottom of it.
Come on, Giles.
And from this, I glean that he's the reason she was arrested, and the man who was sold the pig is the reason she was convicted. So, like, he's kind of the reason she's in there.
I just want to say this is all circumstantial evidence.
Oh, well, yeah, for sure. And it's all hearsay. Everything in the witch trials is hearsay.
It's worse than hearsay. It's horseshit.
So John brought Mary to court to confess that it was all fake and that she, quote unquote, Never saw no spirits. Judge Danforth is questioning the motives behind John's bringing Mary to the court and how adamant he is about the fakeness of it all. Does he mean to overthrow the court? John says he's just come to save his wife. Judge Danforth says Elizabeth claims she's pregnant, but shows no signs. If they let her live another month and she starts to show, they'll let her live a year. They say, surely that's fine. And John is like, no, it's not fine. Anyway, they move on and
Okay.
yeah, they move on and John presents a petition of 91 signatures of Salem townspeople, all attesting to the character, Christianity, and goodness of the women being questioned. Reverend Parris says all these people should be questioned because they're questioning the court's authority. Fuck Reverend Parris.
I'd be questioning the court's authority as well.
Francis panics because he promised no harm would come to these people who signed. Judge Danforth does have warrants for arrest drawn up for all of these people. Francis is horrified, stating he's brought trouble upon these people, and Judge Danforth states, "No, old man, you have not hurt these people if they are of good conscience. But you must understand that a person is either with this court or he must be counted against it. There is no road in between."
Oh my God.
So literally, you are with us or against us.
Okay, so there's something wrong with Danforth.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with all of them.
Yeah. Giles then gives Judge Danforth a deposition in which he accuses Thomas Putnam of telling his daughter to accuse George Jacobs of witchcraft so that Thomas can get a hold of his land. Basically, if George Jacobs were to be arrested, his land would go up for auction, and this land in particular, only Thomas would be able to afford it. So that's why he thinks Thomas is having George Jacobs accused.
Let me read that again.
Yeah, there's a lot of names.
Judge Danforth a deposition in which Giles accuses Tom Putnam of telling his daughter.
Yes, Giles accuses Thomas Putnam of telling Thomas's daughter to accuse George Jacobs of witchcraft so that Thomas can get a hold of George's land.
Okay, I was about to say, I know there's some shit about Giles and his land, and that's why he didn't plead.
Right.
I was wondering if that's what that was about, because
that comes later.
Excellent.
Giles is a character in Act 1. There's a lot of talk about, in Act 1 and actually this act as well, there's a lot of talk about how he has been to court many times because he sues a lot of people regularly. The guy knows his rights, I guess.
That's okay. There ain't nothing wrong with that.
It's hard to tell how many of these cases he was in the right because obviously I'm reading a fictional book.
Right.
But all I can tell is that he is just in court a lot before all this witch business happened. So him handing this deposition to Judge Danforth about Thomas Putnam is very a familiar gesture to him. But it's interesting because this is something he's doing for the sake of George Jacobs instead of himself. He's basically charging him with conspiracy. When Judge Danforth asks for the basis of this allegation, it's pretty much hearsay, which is hilarious because it's all hearsay. So he says, okay, so this is hearsay. Who did you hear it from? Giles says, obviously I can't tell you. They'll end up in jail. Judge Danforth replies that if Giles can't say who told him such a thing, then he'll be arrested for contempt of court. Giles says, this is a hearing. You can't arrest me for contempt of a hearing. And Danforth basically goes, oh, so you're a lawyer now.
Yeah, the fuck he is, because he knows all of his freaking rights. Oh my God, it's not illegal to know. Oh my God.
Right.
Oh my God.
And then they move on, and John presents, it's John's turn now. They stop. They do this a couple of times in this act, and it's weird, but I know they have a lot to go through in this act, so they move on, and John then presents Mary Warren's deposition, where she claims that she and all her friends were lying. Reverend Hale says, a simple farmer shouldn't make this argument when lives are on the line. Please talk to a lawyer about this, which is fair, but also ouch. Like, yeah, obviously a lawyer should be making this argument, but no one else is vouching for these women.
Why didn't they get like immediately arrested on spot when they were like, we were lying about it?
Well, only Mary is saying that they were lying. Only Mary is. And, you know, it's her word against theirs. They haven't questioned the other girls yet. And it doesn't do them any favors for Mary to be telling the truth. That's the answer to that, I guess. And also they're minors, I guess.
There were babies that died.
Oh, true. I mean, they would still get hung if they were convicted, so I guess that doesn't really matter.
I'm pretty sure the youngest that was killed for witchcraft was 4 years old.
Oh my God.
I'm fairly
Jesus
certain her name was
Christ.
Dorothy.
That's
And we'll be
awful.
absolutely going into that because there's no way in hell that we aren't going over that because it's a cruel part of American history.
That's horrific. So clearly the fact that they were minors doesn't matter.
Oh, I would.
Obviously, like I said, obviously a lawyer should be making this argument, but no one else is vouching for these women except for John Proctor, literally. In response, Judge Danforth basically says, I had to read this like 3 times in the original, like in the book, I had to read it 3 times because I just didn't understand.
Okay.
Like, clearly this isn't what he's trying to say, but it is. He basically says, only the witch and the victim know of the crime because it's invisible. Ipso facto, lawyers are useless because the only ones to argue are the witch and the victim. And obviously we're going to side with the victim and condemn the witch.
What if the victim was a dumbass?
I was like, surely this isn't what he's saying. And I read it like 2 or 3 times. And I was like, no, that's basically what he's saying.
Facto.
But yeah, basically he's saying, we don't need lawyers because only the witch and the victim know which one's the witch and the victim. What he's saying is only the victim knows which one's the witch. So we can only trust what the victim says. The victim knows who the witch is, and so
that don't make a damn lick of sense.
No, it doesn't.
Because here's the thing. Witches can cast spells and make hex bags and shit and just like do it out of view of the victim. Just saying. You know what I'm saying? Like I could just like up a spell right here in my little library and cast a spell on Jim, and guess what? If Jim don't see it, how the hell's he gonna know it's me?
Right, exactly.
So fuck that.
It's so stupid. That's why after that I put ... okay. Like whatever the fuck you say, I guess. Like, so after reading Mary's deposition, Judge Danforth brings in the rest of the girls to question them. Although only really Abby replies, and she calls Mary a liar, which we were all expecting. This is when it's revealed to Judge Danforth that Reverend Parris had discovered Abby and the girls dancing in the woods. And like we talked about earlier, dancing, not okay. This kind of throws everything into question for him because, like I said, dancing, not okay. He's like, you let them dance? And he's like, no, I didn't let them dance. Like, I saw them dancing. Like, they were dancing in secret.
They were so stupid.
For those of you listening, Kaya, like, just keeps stopping, like, with this dumbfounded look on her face. And she just is truly speechless.
They're so stupid.
They are stupid.
Oh my god.
They're incredibly
Like,
stupid.
listen, I know they didn't like obviously they didn't know like dinosaurs existed because it's before that fucking time. But like, dude, like how fucking stupid do you have to be? Like these people were morons.
Yeah.
And Arthur Miller's just making it worse.
In prior court hearings, Mary had fainted and said she was choked by spirits in court many times. So to prove it was pretend, Reverend Parris asks her to faint on command, and she can't do it. Judge Danforth is like, well, obviously it's because there's no spirits being set upon you. Mary says she only thought she saw spirits, but she didn't really see any. And Judge Hathorne is like, well, how is that? Like, how can you think you saw them, but you didn't see them? And the quote from Mary Warren is, I cannot tell how, but I did. I heard the other girls screaming, and you, Your Honor, you seemed to believe them, and it were only sport in the beginning, sir, but then the whole world cried, spirits, spirits, and I promise you, Mr. Danforth, I only thought I saw them, but I did not. So it's like mass hysteria. It's pretty much what she's describing. Kaya is touching her temple presently and looking very disappointed.
Okay. This is, I'm sure this has come up in other people's minds. I'm sure of it. I want to know where and when witches originated. Okay.
Oh,
I want to know if witches were considered to be real at this time.
yes.
Okay, because my brain is sitting here thinking, I'm just like, okay, so modern day witchcraft is, I don't even know, because I don't. But I'm fairly certain it's nothing macabre, nothing heinous, nothing out of malice, I don't think. I mean, obviously we see and hear of witchcraft in the media, and it obviously has a bad, portrayal.
Yeah.
You're watching like Supernatural and they're talking about hex bags and these bitches are killing bitches. This is a real reaction.
Yeah, I know. I know you're not hamming it up.
I have nothing.
Witches were believed to be real back then because, like, to deny the existence of witches was to deny, like, Christianity, essentially. Like, to deny, like, the existence of God. Because if witches weren't real, then the devil wasn't real, then God wasn't real. That's kind of the line of reasoning there back then.
That's not reasonable reasoning.
No, it's not. It's not. But that's how, like, that's why earlier they asked John Proctor and Elizabeth Proctor if they believed in witches. And John was like, well, not really, but the Bible says I should, so I do.
Are witches in the Bible?
I was raised Christian, but I was not very good at reading the Bible, because I don't know if you try to read that book, but it's fucking thick. So what's the word I'm looking for? It's dense.
I would agree with that.
Have you tried to read it?
Yes.
You know, in Genesis, where they talk about like, oh, heaven, earth, blah 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 blah, on the third day, whatever. And then they're like, and then this guy had these kids, and then this guy had these kids, and then this guy had these kids, and then this guy, I never made it past that part.
There was a point when I wanted to be religious. And I almost bought a Bible at the dollar store.
What stopped you? It's only $1.
Because I kind of wanted to be religious, but I kind of didn't want to be religious.
You can download a Bible app for free on your phone. My grandma tells me all the time.
19 at the time. I didn't have that technology.
Anyway,
what have we gotten ourselves into?
I don't know. Anyways, where were we? Right, so Mary Warren was basically describing mass hysteria. She was experiencing mass hysteria because, all the other girls were screaming, and the judges were believing the girls, and then she started to believe it as well, and belief is a powerful thing. That's kind of how mass hysteria works. Judge Danforth starts questioning Abby some more, but Abby ain't having it, and instead pretends to be bewitched by Mary, and the other girls follow suit.
Abby!
Oh my god. This passage, my guy, oh my god. This is the last straw for John, and he snaps. He lurches at Abby, grabs her by the hair, and calls her a whore. The other men in the room are like, a what now? And this is when John finally confesses to the affair. Specifically the crime of lechery. They use the word lechery a lot in the book. He's trying his best to plead with the judge that this is just the vengeance of a scorned lover and truly just all pretend, No one is actually bewitched, and no one is witching. Nothing is going on here. Just a bunch of girls fucking around and a bunch of neighbors trying to get back at each other. In response, Judge Danforth calls in John's wife, Elizabeth. John told them that she knew, and that's why Abby got let go as their servant. So their stories should match up, right? Well,
They don't.
Elizabeth wanted to save John's skin, so when asked if John was an adulterer or a lecher, she said no. John cries out as she leaves the room that he had confessed, and Elizabeth is like, ah, shit. Reverend Hale fully believes John at this point and admits that he never trusted Abby. And now Abby is pretending that Mary has sent a bird to claw her face or something. The girls start mimicking Mary, which makes Judge Danforth and Reverend Parris start questioning her feverishly.
Abby needs to shut the fuck up.
Well, it's not just Abby, it's also, Mercy and Betty and the other girls too. Like, they're all mimicking Mary because Abby started it. They could be succumbing to the mass hysteria just like Mary did, but it's God. And this leads to Judge Danforth and Reverend Parris questioning her feverishly. John and Reverend Hale are trying to tell them that literally nothing is going on except the girls' nonsense, which drives Mary hysterical. And honestly, I can't blame her because reading this passage literally gave me anxiety. So, as a result, Mary then turns on John, saying that all along his goal was to get his wife back and overthrow the court. So Mary once again succumbed to the mass hysteria.
Doesn't mean witchcraft.
She says something like, he comes to me at night and bids me write this deposition, and he just wants to do the devil's work and overthrow the court, or something along those lines. It means witchcraft to them.
They need to study some witchcraft before they're crying witchcraft. I know this is John Miller's interpretation. I know this is not exactly what happened, but it's very frustrating. This whole series of events is very frustrating. And I know we're only on Act 2?
No, we're on Act 3. We're almost done.
Okay. Of how many acts?
4.
Oh, okay.
We're almost done. They're like, so you're with the Antichrist?
Oh my God.
That's literally what they say. John replies, I say God is dead. A fire is burning. I hear the boot of Lucifer. I see his filthy face. And it is my face and yours, Danforth. For them that quail to bring men out of ignorance, as I have quailed, and as you quail now, when you know in all your black hearts that this be fraud. God damns our kind especially, and we will burn together. So, yeah, John is arrested because he's like, this shit is fake. You know it's fake. I know it's fake. We all know it's fake. And like, where is
bullshit?
Yeah, where's God in all this? Hello? That's basically what he's saying.
I would be arrested too.
I would be so arrested. Reverend Hale is a bro, and he denounces the court proceedings because it's bullshit.
And then there's a whole 3 months between Act 3 and Act 4.
Yep, 3 months pass. Act 4 starts in the jail, and Reverend Parris and Reverend Hale are with Rebecca Nurse, remember the 90-year-old lady who was arrested, lest we forget. And, she's in jail in the 1600s, so that can't be good for a 90-year-old woman. They're trying to get her to confess to witchcraft. The judges come and they're annoyed that Reverend Hale is there because, remember, he denounces the proceedings because, he thinks it's all bullshit. So they're annoyed that he was let in. So Reverend Parris reveals to the judges that Abby has gone missing. Abby said she was spending the night at Mercy's house, and Mercy told her parents that she was spending the night at Abby's house.
Wow.
Right. Reverend Parris found his lockbox broken into and all his money was stolen. Like, he's literally penniless now.
Bummer.
Yeah, like, if it wasn't Reverend Parris, I mean, I don't know, sucks to suck, I guess. His daughter Betty said she had heard talks of ships, so he's pretty sure they took the money and ran. Reverend Parris is asking the judges to postpone the hangings. The reason is because there's talks that in Andover, a town ways over, the court had been overthrown because the same sort of thing happened, but the townspeople wouldn't hear anything of witchcraft. And they worried the same thing is going to happen in Salem.
Okay.
This quote, which I edited and paraphrased a bit to make more sense from Reverend Harris, shows that it's all about public perception and control via the church / the court. So the quote is, "For if Reverend Hale bring even one of the convicted to God, that confession surely damns the others in the public eye, and none may doubt any more that they are all linked to hell. The way things are now, unconfessed and claiming innocence, doubts are multiplied. Many honest people will weep for them, and our good purpose is lost in their tears."
Okay.
So basically, he's saying if the Reverend can get one of the convicted to confess, then that one confession will damn all the others. And like any doubt that witchcraft is like not happening will be tossed aside, because the way things are now, they're all not confessing. They're all claiming innocence.
I can't imagine why.
The doubts are just piling up. People will weep for them if they hang. As Reverend Parris says, quote unquote, "our good purpose is lost in their tears." Although I'm a little lost on what their good purpose is, but I digress. Judge Danforth does not want to postpone. He says 12 have hung already for this crime, so to pardon anyone left would cast doubt on the judgments the other 12 received. They bring Elizabeth to John before his scheduled hanging in an effort to get him to confess. They're left alone, and it's a really sweet, soft-spoken scene. It feels really gentle and nice. They talk about her pregnancy and their boys, and how Elizabeth hasn't seen them. Then Elizabeth tells John that Giles Corey is dead. He wasn't hung, but pressed to death by stones. He was charged with witchcraft, and when asked to plead guilty or not guilty, he refused to reply. So they laid stone after stone on top of his chest in an effort to get him to plead one way or the other. He refused and instead said, "More weight." Those were his last words.
Yep.
This way, he wouldn't be charged as a wizard, and his property would go to his sons instead of being auctioned off. John asks her if others have confessed to the charge of witchcraft, and none have. He doesn't think he should confess, but he's been considering it. When he asks Elizabeth what she wants him to do, she just says that she wants him alive. During their talk, at one point, she says, "It takes a cold wife to prompt lechery," which is just total bullshit. She's blaming herself for being cheated on, basically, and that's just whatever.
How society was.
Yeah, but whatever. Even John knows that it's bullshit, but Elizabeth, in the last 3 months of isolation, has, she's committed to the bit, of being the icy wife that prompted the adultery.
Yeah.
The judge returns, and when asked if he will confess, John replies that he will, quote unquote, have his life. So they assume he will confess. He's truly pissed at himself for coming to this decision, but he does it. He's like shouting and tossing stuff around. He's not happy that he's like keeping his life this way. When asked if he's seen the devil with anyone else, like they go down a list of names of the accused, and he answers no to everyone. The judge is like, "Come on, man, I can't trade your life for a lie," which is laughable because
they did.
Yeah. This ties back to the Red Scare, because again, come on, just tell me your neighbor Joe is a lefty and you can go home. It's a real bad scare tactic. Yeah. We picked a real bummer for our first episode. I'm realizing. Oops. But it's important. It's important to talk about the witch trials.
You can't have a podcast about witchcraft portrayal in the media without doing the Crucible, because this is very heavily based on a true event.
Yeah.
Very heavy. And to leave this one out because it is difficult, sad, old, not as interesting necessarily, because I wasn't interested in this in 8th grade. Hell no. Excuse me. Senior year. I wasn't interested in this in senior year. We can't dismiss this one.
Yeah.
The Crucible is crucial. We promise we'll have good episodes coming forward. Some spooky ones.
They won't all be bummers, but the first episode, like Kai said, we have to talk about the realness of, because I I am a witch and I practice witchcraft, but I also have not been accused of witchcraft, and I have not been threatened with a hanging for witchcraft. And sometimes we need to acknowledge, I don't know, I guess the privilege in that,
Progress of
the
a
progress.
society.
Yeah, the progress
The
in
fact
that.
that witchcraft is not nearly as taboo as it was one day,
Mm-hmm.
as it was many, many years ago. I think this episode is important. This piece of media is important because of how it ties into American history and how it ties into American politics.
Yeah. And like you said, I think it's important to acknowledge the progress in that I can just be a witch and openly and not fear for my life.
Right.
That's pretty neat. I like that. So as much of a bummer as it is, I mean, first of all, it's like a really well-written story.
Mm-hmm.
It's juicy and it has all the nice elements that you need for the drama. I think it also is really telling, like you said, it also ties in with the Red Scare, and then it also might, God forbid, draw a parallel to sometime in the future.
Right.
Maybe I'm trying to be too deep. Anyways,
They write us down his confession with the intention to nail it to the church door, have him sign it, but John snatches it out of their hands and they plead for it back.
mm-hmm. John says, I have 3 kids. How am I going to teach them to act when I sold my friends? I bring shame to all of them when this is nailed to the church door, when they hang for their silence. John says, just tell everyone I confessed to you because, the judge has the authority. And Judge Danforth is like, okay, what's the diff then? Like, what's the difference between me saying that you did it and you writing down that you did it? And John says, because it is my name and because I cannot have another in my life, because I lie and sign myself to lies, because I am not worth the dust on the feet of them that hang. How may I live without my name? I have given you my soul, leave me my name. And so John tears the confession in half and obviously condemns himself to hanging. Reverend Parris is begging Elizabeth to go and plead one last time with John, but read the room, it's over. The drums are rattling and crashing, and they reach a big climax, and this part is also really well written, especially considering it's a play. And then the curtain falls, and the book is over.
And I'm guessing it's implied that John gets hung.
Yes, along with Rebecca Nurse as well, the 90-year-old woman.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. I have a bit here. There's a passage at the end of the book called Echoes Down the Corridor, and it's kind of like a summary of what happens after everything. Basically, what happened was, after all that, Paris was voted from office. Abby turned up later as a prostitute in Boston.
I'm not surprised. I am not surprised.
Oh, we should mention that like a sex worker, prostitute is not an okay word to use anymore, but
it was 1950s and that was the word that they used in the book.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I wrote more about this in my other notes, but the government awarded compensation to victims that were still living and families of the dead. And I knew about this, but this passage in the book said that some of the beneficiaries were actually not victims and informers, so people like accusers, which is wild. How the frick does that happen?
Didn't we say that it came out to about 13 grand in today's money?
Yeah, Elizabeth Proctor got 13 grand.
She got what, 300 GBP?
Yeah. In 1711, government of Massachusetts paid damages to John and Elizabeth Proctor. Obviously, John was dead, so just Elizabeth. 150 pounds. And that's $13,300 in today money.
So what I did to calculate that was I converted pounds into US dollars and then put it into an inflation calculator. I believe that's what you did too.
Yeah. And I'm glad you double checked my work because math is not my strong suit.
Oh, it's not mine either. So honestly, both of us could be wrong.
But it's just kind of astounding to me that like that's what they decided that his life was worth. I don't know, man. I mean, at least it's something, but
Sorry, we picked your husband. Here's 150 pounds.
right?
You think they did that with Giles Corey's kids? And they were like, sorry, we killed your dad. Here's 150 pounds, but we put more weight than that on him.
Ooh.
If
Hmm?
if I personally was a petty bitch, that's exactly what I would do. Like if I was one of his kids, I'd be like, yeah, you put more weight than 150 pounds on my dad, so I want more.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm salty.
No, I would do the same thing.
Get it? Because pounds and pounds.
I get it, yeah.
Yeah.
In the book, they only mentioned that amount for Elizabeth Proctor. They didn't really say like who else got compensation or how much it might have been. They really only gave that amount for Elizabeth Proctor, and I think that's because Arthur Miller made him the main character of the book.
Yeah.
They also mention in this little summary that the congregation rescinded the excommunications that occurred in 1712. They only did so because the government ordered it, and certain farms which had belonged to the victims were left to ruin, and for more than a century, no one would buy them or live on them.
It's almost like they were cursed. Almost.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings me to Giles Corey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I listened to the Morbid podcast, and one of their earlier episodes from a couple years ago was about Giles Corey. They did episodes on the witch trials. They did episodes on witch trials in Salem, over in Ireland, over in England. They've done a lot on witch trials. And I learned that Giles Corey, they say that his last words were more weight. However, it has also been debated that his last words, with his dying breath, he used that dying breath to put a curse on the mayor, excuse me, on the sheriff of Salem.
Mm-hmm.
And since Giles Corey's death, every sheriff of Salem has died an unnatural and untimely death.
Holy shit.
To this day.
Really?
Yes. And you can look it up because I did, because I was flabbergasted by this information. Because I'm sitting here, I'm like, curses don't exist. Yeah, they do. They totally do. There's no way. Like it can't just be a coincidence for almost 400 years. It can't be. I'm sorry.
I don't need to look it up. I believe it.
Like that's generational. Like that's so many generations of people.
That's
Like
bonkers.
It's like 50. Would we say 50?
That's 20 generations.
That's a lot of generations.
That is a lot of generations. That's a lot of years.
Sheriffs.
That's a lot of sheriffs. Yeah.
And the fact that they're still dying untimely, unnatural deaths is it's pretty fucky. Anyway.
Well, earlier you mentioned race, how race plays into everything. So I want to go back to Tituba for a minute. You know, the topic of witchcraft is debated, and a lot of people, you know, think that what happened in Salem is mass hysteria, and I do think mass hysteria for sure happened. For sure. I think what Arthur Miller wrote with Mary, I think that was a perfect description of mass hysteria, and that's likely what happened with a lot of the girls that we're accusing. I think they were experiencing mass hysteria. However, I do think that there might have been actual witchcraft occurring, and Arthur Miller does as well.
Before we get into race,
Yes.
I do want to clarify that we are two white women.
Yes, I am extremely white. I'm very extremely pale.
I'm many different breeds of white, but I am a white woman.
Yes, I'm many flavors as white as well. There's not even, I did an ancestry kit. I'm all white.
There's like 0.02% of possible Arabian.
That's cool.
And that goes back to like the very first generation down the patriarchal line. German, Lithuanian, Polish, Irish.
Right. So we're two white women. So like, let that be a disclaimer. We will probably talk about witchcraft and different cultures.
And I definitely want to have an episode about witchcraft of different cultures.
Yeah, we will probably be talking about different cultures, and race and appropriation will probably be brought up quite a bit because it is a hot topic in the realm of modern witchcraft. Because the thing is that in modern day witchcraft, a lot of practices have been appropriated, and so navigating that these days, we're gonna talk about it basically. So in this episode, we're talking about Tituba. Arthur Miller thinks that Tituba dabbled in the quote-unquote black arts, and
Don't want to use that phrase.
right.
Obviously, like you quoted him,
Right.
but black arts is appropriation.
The term black arts is rooted in racism. Before I start, I wanted to get some input from the community, but I wasn't able to get much input in time for our episode. So if you are a Black witch and you have some input, please feel free to email us or message us. Yeah. Because I'm very interested in how that phrase makes you feel, what your input is, what your take is. Like I said, the term black arts is rooted in racism because it is usually associated with baneful works, so things like hexes, curses, magical workings that are harmful, and these things are fine to do. The thing that is not okay about it is the fact that it's called black arts, and it is usually associated with people of color, usually African Americans, because if you look at historical drawings done by white people of African American tribes doing rituals, it is just very plainly racist. And this is kind of where black arts started originating. The phrase black arts started originating. Obviously, when someone says black arts today, they usually don't know that it's so loaded, but it's still something to avoid. These days, quote unquote black arts is more something that we would usually call the left-handed path or left-handed workings. These workings that are like hexes, curses, things like that, they can be just as helpful in healing as quote unquote white magic or magical workings from the right-handed path. Again, white magic, almost as bad as using the term black arts, because we don't like the whole white equals purity and black equals evil and bad. That's not a good dynamic that we want to be
Agreed.
Pushing. I do want to mention that we don't know that Tituba was a hoodoo or voodoo practitioner. We think she's indigenous, right? She's indigenous.
From what I read, she was from South America, but we've also heard that she's from Barbados. In the book, they kind of, and maybe this is my limited memory from my senior year of high school when I read this, but in the book, and we were talking about this earlier, she's almost painted as, what did we call it?
The mammy caricature.
caricature,
Yes.
a jovial black servant woman.
Yes.
Um, and that's exactly what, like, how she was painted in my mind up until I started doing more research on Tituba for this episode.
Yeah. And then we found out that she was 12 to 17, which
And then we
is,
found out she was 12 to 17 when she died
yeah,
because she was hung for witchcraft.
yeah. She was hung in the book, but they don't really talk about it. She's in a scene briefly in the beginning of Act 4, but they don't really say anything. She's talking about how she wants to go back to Barbados, but then she exits stage left, you know what I mean? Like, they don't.
So it's like also implied.
Yes.
Okay.
Her and Sarah Good. There's a lot that I had to leave out for sake of time. Um, but yeah, we don't know if there's a lot of books about Tituba out there that I want to read. So I don't know if Tituba was a hoodoo or voodoo practitioner. I don't know if she practiced just witchcraft in general, or if she practiced witchcraft at all. Like, there's a lot of books out there for me to read. I don't really know. But she was accused of conjuring.
And you do have a note on here stating that Anne Putnam's that Tituba's is said to have spoken to the dead on the night in question, specifically to Anne Putnam's deceased children. Correct me if I'm wrong, Anne Putnam is the one who had 7 children that died in childbirth. How is
Yes.
she gonna speak to deceased
Infants.
infants who don't speak? And then Anne Putnam sent her daughter Ruth to ask Tituba to conjure spirits of her dead children, but was Anne Putnam ever punished for this? We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how Anne thought that she was gonna speak with infants. I mean, well, like, I think the idea is she would speak with their spirits, like, because the idea is that, your spirit can speak.
And I have issues with that because she thinks that those children died because of witchcraft when obviously it was because she was bad at giving birth. So if she believes that they died because of witchcraft, why would she speak to a witch? They always say, all these people who are religious say, yeah, you can still talk to your grandparents after they've passed on. Just talk. Just start talking. They'll hear you. So why couldn't Anne have done that? I don't know. I mean, listen, I know it's like 400 years ago, but
I was wondering, like, is soliciting witchcraft not just as bad in the church's eyes? Because Anne Putnam does say that she had sent her daughter Ruth, like you said, to ask Tituba to conjure those spirits of her dead children. Like, she admits to that. And she doesn't ever see any sort of punishment or anything like that we know of. And so, like, is it not just as, like, if, I don't know, like, if you're soliciting witchcraft, is that not just as bad?
no,
If witchcraft is bad, I don't
I
know.
think it's just as bad because if you hire a hitman to kill your wife, it's just as bad as killing your wife.
Right.
So coming from that standpoint, I think if witchcraft was so incredibly goddamn terrible, then soliciting for witchcraft would also, in my eyes, be just as terrible.
Right.
Like the woman should be shunned or hung for that if that's what the case is, but
Yeah. At the end of the day, like, none of these people should have been hung or anything, but like I'm just so baffled by all of it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Anyways, like I said, we don't know what she practiced, but she was accused of practicing. The definition of conjuring, as is what she was accused of, the definition of conjuring is to call upon a spirit or ghost to appear by means of magic or ritual. And this can also be seen as necromancy, if I'm not mistaken, is
Okay.
speaking to the dead. This necromancy also falls under quote unquote black arts, or left-handed path, left-handed workings. I kind of wanted to address the whole quote unquote black arts thing because I feel like some people still use it, and
We'll say that
most
black magic.
yes, most of us know. Well, in black magic, I think it's okay to use it depending on the context. Because if you're saying black magic, as in like black people magic, do you know what I mean?
Like black girl magic.
Right. But like not the phrase black people magic, like it's implied implied people magic. Like
Magic,
black people are doing the magic.
yes.
Yes.
And not necessarily as dark magic.
Right. Right.
We all know that black girl magic is a positive term for black girls who are being successful.
Yes. And so black magic, when used, like how I'm trying to say it is like when we use it, it would be black magic. It's just like
Referring to
black people doing magic.
the people doing the magic,
Yes.
not as the type of magic.
Right. Which is, it's actually funny because it's while I was researching this whole thing about race and magic and the crucible, I want to mention this thesis I found online. I want to mention two things. One of them is a thesis I found online called Black Magic and White Supremacy, Witchcraft as an Allegory for Race and Power by Nicholas Charles Peters. It's so good. It uses American Horror Story Coven, which we are going to cover eventually, I hope, and Lovecraft Country, which I've never heard of or seen, but it has to do with witches. This person uses these two pieces of media to demonstrate how Black and white witches are presented differently, and there's also a lot about how literacy is important in magic and how that is a tool used against Black witches. And there's just so much in this essay, and it's really good, and it's a pretty short read, so if you have the time you should read it. This is why I love media. This is why I love media literacy and media dissection. I think you should read it. It's really good. And I also found a video from Harvard. I found a video from Harvard, from the Center for the Study of World Religions.
Interesting.
And the video there is so wonderful. It's about how folks these days are using hoodoo to connect to their ancestral roots and becoming hoodoo practitioners.
That's neat.
There's like an influx of solitary hoodoo practitioners, just like there's an influx in, other types of pagan practitioners, and how like the internet is kind of being that community for the hoodoo practitioners. That video is called Black Magic Matters, Hoodoo as Ancestral Religion. And both of these titles use Black magic as, like how I said it, like Black people magic, you know what I mean? So
What's next?
I don't know, you tell me. What's next, Kaya?
This week we're doing The Crucible Part 2, where we talk about the Salem witch trials.
Yes.
So this is going to be an episode rooted more in history. It may or may not be longer. It may or may not be shorter. It may or may not be the exact same length of time. This is probably one that I will lead into and go into and kind of be Kaya-centric. And I'll probably re-listen to some of the morbid episodes about it and go into just all of it. That's what's next.
So yeah, we did it. Oh my god, this is gonna be
our first full-length episode.
Yeah, we did it. Our podcast is available on all the things now. except
Check
for,
the link tree for the info.
yeah, I think we're still waiting on Google Podcasts, but we're available on Spotify, Amazon, Apple
Audible,
Podcasts,
Audible.
Stitcher, all the things. Just check the link tree. Follow us on all the things. If you like us, consider supporting us on Patreon for $2 a month.
We currently only have one patron, and it's me.
Yeah, yeah. Kai is our biggest fan.
It's true.
See you next week. Bye,
Bye,
witches.
witches. We tried.
Close enough.